be on your best behavior.
Okay, welcome everyone to Community Governance Oversight meeting number 5. And welcome everyone. So this is the penultimate meeting, and I'll just go into screen sharing if I can find that. Okay, can you everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just dive straight in, and once we're done, we can, at the hour, we can stop the recording. Here's Vanessa, and we can have an informal discussion if people want to stay. Okay, so just get straight into Treasury. Is there any updates from Treasury, Andre or Miroslav?
Yes, this is your second last meeting. So we're gonna, after we paid Livia for this meeting and the last meeting, we've paid everything except the surveys, retrospectives, and reports.
Right.
So tomorrow we have to do the math on that.
Yeah.
Course to be ready for the 9th.
Yeah, that's right.
So we can pay that.
Okay, so we just arranged to meet to discuss that tomorrow, Andre.
Yes.
Okay. So that's Andre and Stephen. And there's enough. We've already paid in advance for the town hall slides and everything else, have we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If there's any questions about Treasury or budgeting, no. Okay, I'll move on to town hall slides. Alison, do you want to give an update on the town hall slides?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much of an update except that they were given. And as always, I welcome feedback. Stephen, I know we talked about whether we should talk about the fact that we were not talking about promoting our proposal.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't really handle that all that well, but I welcome any feedback for the
for the context there. We had some in the background also for Audit Circle. Actually, we had a sense in the community that people who have platforms on town hall shouldn't be promoting proposals, and so we kind of removed links to Audit Circle proposals and community governance oversight proposals in all our presentations while the voting was going on. But as you pointed out, Alison, not everyone did that. So maybe we were fools for doing that. You know, I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I think the problem was some people presented videos that were already pre-recorded before that was mentioned, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I quite liked it. I think it was quite snappy. You had a good update. There's a lot we're actually doing work now, so there was links to work that we're doing. So I thought that was quite good.
Any feedback or suggestions for next time?
Not internally, no. Might be interesting to hear what other people are thinking about this process and stuff, but
right. Okay, moving on then. Sorry, breaking up.
Got it.
Sorry, okay. Can you hear me, everyone?
Have we lost Stephen?
Hello?
I think your internet's a bit.
Yeah, let me just try a few things. Hold on.
We can hear you, but you seem to be frozen on the video.
Okay. I'll try and turn my video off. Okay, is that any better, or just you can hear me?
Seems better, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure if I missed something you said on the slides, Phil.
No, just that we probably should ask externally from this group what people are feeling about this group, I guess.
Okay.
The survey at some point.
That might be the voting.
Yeah, That's true, because
True.
we've got our fund proposal in for, well, we'll find out soon whether that's voted for next week, I suppose.
Sure.
Okay, moving on. There's no updates for the Fund 8 proposal. Voting is finished today. Is that right? I'm not sure. And then we'll know whether we are funded for Fund 8 by the end of next week or something like that.
May 13th.
May the
I'm on the
13th.
edge of my seat.
Yeah. Okay, quickly go to the project board, quick review where we are to give you kind of context. So today we have a few things to do. We have our newsletter as usual. Coming up is a literature review that's related to DREPs. I'll talk about that later. We have a Fund 7 final report to do, which is related to the report. In progress, we have this meeting and all our deliverables, which are in progress. And what's been done is a literature review, the town hall slides, meeting with TiVo, and also what's not on here is some circle oversight work as well. So that's the overview, just give it a quick. So this will be up to date. So we're making progress across the board. And moving on to our deliverables, the first one is challenge setting. And from the last meetings we had, we were going to speak to Roe of AdaGov, Phil, and I suppose you and me, Alison, were supposed to talk to George.
Yeah, so I have exchanged messages with George. He's very interested to talk with us about what he's doing and see if there's any synergy or scope potential.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's appropriate, he said any weekday after UTC 5. So I don't know if we want to, when we want to see who would be available for that conversation.
1700. I mean, as we're running out, do we just need to get a kind of context for challenge, what's going on in challenge setting, and then to put into our final report, and then just leave it at that until the Fund 8 proposal?
Yeah, that's probably a good point. I guess we're out of time. Boy, the time flies to do anything more substantial than that. With
reporting on the vote, like the way George ran this thing, where he created a large body of proposals that then put forward. It's kind of an interesting process. So there's probably some oversight reporting in that space.
Yeah, I suppose I don't want to step on George's. I don't want to repeat, or steal any of George's thunder on that. So it'd be best to probably meet with him and then to say, look, we want to refer to what you're doing in our report, and then get it from him what he wants to contribute.
Yeah, but I guess it's interesting what the vote will lead to from this, right? Whether a large body of his, whether he's communicated that well to the voting body, and that did the voting body understand that he was trying to create this category structure and voted them all in? In this maybe a slight analysis about whether equal wallets voted for them or whether it's a whole random array. Just a brief sort of analysis might be interesting.
Yeah, because he's used challenge settings he's using the challenge settings to try and achieve his objective, isn't he?
Yeah,
which is quite interesting. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about that, Phil? Do you think that was the right way to approach it for George?
I mean, it's the right way to do it inside Catalyst. And then I had some questions about the way he was doing the organizing processes of that. But I mean, at the end of the day, he was making proposals. So his reasoning for doing it was, it doesn't matter what my process is, it matters what the voters' outcome is, whether they agreed with the process or not. So that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, from a governance perspective, also, there's that kind of precedent it sets. Like, can you change essentially a parameter, if you like, through a challenge setting? And we have the same thing don't we have the same thing, Alison, with things like voting for Catalyst Circle, maybe as well?
Yeah.
So okay.
And I
Well,
guess-
actually, that brings up a whole different issue. We should probably, this doesn't belong in the challenge settings, but we should report on where Circle V3 is,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of confusion about whether it was a 3-month or a 6-month term. And I guess there is not going to be another election right now. So we should definitely provide an update on that.
Or our scope, but our scope, I know it depends on whether we want to be flexible. Our scope is the problem sensing of Circle, but
Right.
not so strictly speaking, how they vote themselves and everything is out of scope. But for this, unless we decide to change our scope, but we are looking at problem sensing. So maybe you can hold that thought, Alison, and we can maybe return to that.
Yeah.
Okay, what we'll do is obviously an action coming out of there. I'll talk to George, or we'll contact George and arrange a meeting for that time, and basically just to see what his input would be into a kind of a some context for our final report, and then we can talk about where we could go forward on the subject after we have the voting in on that for Fund 8. So moving on to Catalyst Circle problem sensing, there's now.
Sorry, could we just go back quickly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
I had an update with Ro. So
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
it's okay. He does live in Australia. He is prepared to come, I guess, if we do want to invite him to our last meeting to chat about what we're doing and what he's up to.
That'd be difficult, Phil, for the timing. Or
He seems to be okay to get up in the middle of the night. If we can offer it to him, I guess.
well, we can arrange a special meeting because we have other people, so I don't see a problem with that. Shall we? Can you arrange a meeting with him and then?
Okay, I'll see. How he wants to go with that.
What sort of time of day do you think would suit him? Morning, or it'd be for Australia? It'd be later. It would be after 6 or 7, or in the morning.
So, like 10:30. Yeah, morning UTC is good. So
yeah,
10, 11 sort of thing, I think.
Is there anyone here who'd be interested in that?
Yeah, I would be, and UTC morning is good for me.
Okay, so that's
I mean, not every day, but
I'm not sure. I'll put my name.
The other option is
John.
The other option is that he does run his own AdaGov meetups on Sunday mornings, 10:30 UTC. So we could crash his party and then just ask him to continue on if he wants to. I'll mention it to him that's what we can do. So if you guys wanted to attend his AdaGov, AdaGov or meet afterwards, because I attend it to participate in it, and then if you wanted to, we could do it Sunday morning, maybe.
Schedule wise, that does not work for me, but
Okay.
no need to plan around my availability.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll mention it to
It
him.
might be better to do it separate also so we can record it as well. I mean, it's not formal. It's really, I mean, Ro understands what we're doing, doesn't he, Phil? Hopefully. So, it's just really to discuss any crossovers really on challenge settings and, where to go, where we can go forward together on that.
I mean, he's not that focused on challenge setting though.
Yeah.
He's more focused on data and countless system structures.
Yeah, I think it's got dumped in there because that's the only category we could think of putting it in was challenge settings. So I think that's why it's ended up there. But yeah, it's how the work he's doing crosses over with Oversight, I suppose. That's really the subject of the meeting. But sounds like a separate meeting in the morning. Well, for Europeans, sorry, around 9:30 UTC onwards, maybe. Okay. We'll move on to Catalyst Circle problem sensing, and we are now having.
Steve.
We've lost you, Stephen, for a little while now.
Okay, am I back now?
Half, about 80%, I think.
Okay.
It's quite.
Okay, that's unfortunate.
got
Oh well. Okay. Okay, Captain Circle problem sensing. We're now having regular sessions with Captain Circle on looking at the prioritized problems process. Alison or Tivo, do you want to speak about that? Because you've been there at the last meeting.
I mean, I personally think it's a really interesting and fun project to bring some process to the Circle Prioritized Problems board. I wish that I had started my time on the Circle with this kind of structure and understanding of how things could work. So I hope that it'll be a useful and productive way to equip Circle reps to be more effective.
Tivo, do you have any thoughts on this at all?
Yeah, I will say that the good update is that we are halfway through. How do things get on Maraboard is something which seems to be kind of in a finishing terms, but now comes the practice problem stage where the circle is currently working on. So that needs a bit of thinking. And so I guess next sessions are going to be about that, unless we get boggled down in some detail.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to recap for the benefit of people here, we've looked at the problem sensing rubric inherited from Governance Alive. We kind of refined that with input from Nadia. At the last meeting, we looked at how, and then we started to look at how a problem should arrive on the board, like whether, particularly the issue of if there's a problem on the Circle board, should there be evidence that there's some community behind it? You know, so there's some evidence that, you know, it's not just made up, it's not just someone's arbitrary idea, that there's some community impetus for that. And that's the first metric that we identified, and we're going to meet again next week to revisit that. So what we're trying to do is, with Circle, is to come up with a method that can be applied to problems, to putting problems on the board, and then a method of measuring those problems and then moving them across the board. Is there any, we're probably not going to finish it in Fund 7, but I suggest we report on how far we've got. Alison, Tivo, what do you think?
Agree. And yeah, you did a much better summary of what we're doing than I did.
Yeah, I know it's hard to really. Are there any other questions or observations or on suggestions on that?
Regarding the report, how would you mean, like a town hall report or like a closing report, or what do you mean?
I didn't put in an agenda, but I suppose we could talk about it in our business, or we could talk about now. Is that we have two things. There's the report that we have to deliver as part of this proposal, which is like reporting on our deliverables, like how far we got. But there's also our closing report, Tivo, as well. And I was thinking of combining the two.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think those can be one and the same.
So really, yeah, so really we're going to, have one section which will be based on the IOG closing report, and then maybe have an appendix which will have the reporting that we said we were going to do in our original proposal. Yeah, so, and we'll probably as a shared document, which I've started already, which is actually, well, just here, that's it. So just a shell of a document, which we will fill out. Maybe in the next meeting we can then, or offline, we can share that amongst ourselves to fill in. I mean, you raised the issue of Circle voting. Alison, do you think we should return to that at all, or?
I mean, from what the group has been doing in terms of documenting and bringing transparency to all of the different aspects of governance in Catalyst, it seems to me that someone somewhere should make a comment on the fact that there are no Circle V3 election or V4 elections happening right now because Circle V3 is serving for 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't know that it needs to be a big deal, but unless everyone feels strongly that it's out of scope, and I'm open to hearing that, at a minimum, I would think I could say that in the next town hall update, along with the, you know, the updates of the other sort of what's going on in governance that I'm providing. But I'm curious, Vanessa, to see what you think.
Vanessa, you've done documentation on this, haven't you? So.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there was some lack of clarity around whether Circle V3 was going to be for 3 months or 6 months. But I kind of, you know, I asked a few questions about that, and it seemed like it was very much clarified at the start of Circle V3 that it was for 6 months and that there was no intention for it not to be and for there to be elections now. I mean, they've started discussing now what the election process should be for Circle V4, but Circle V4 starts in 7 more meetings from now.
Yeah.
And they feel really clear about that. So
yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to imply that there was confusion on the circle once the Circle V3 kicked off. I just think, well, I don't know, actually. Now my initial thought was it would serve as a reminder, given that there was some confusion at the time of the election, that just to remind people what's happening. There is no election because Circle V3 is serving for 6 months, period. The you know, just exactly what you just said, Vanessa. Unless you think that open, you know, it just opens a can of worms.
I think
we're here to open cans of worms.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's, because Vanessa, you do a lot of Circle Oversight stuff. I work with Circle Admin, and we are talking about similar issues where I think it's quite valid at the next town hall, which will be not next week, the week after for CGO, to refer to, just to say, well, now CCV3 is in CCV4 term, okay, because they decided that they would have a 6-month term at the first meeting. Is that right, Vanessa?
That's the thing. It's quite unclear because some people seem to think that it was agreed at the end of CCV2.
Actually, I would have said that as a CCV2 participant.
Yeah.
There was some discussion in Slack, and there seemed to be a quorum of agreement that the next term would be for 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. But then there was
majority was agreed.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say they are
table as well. Yeah.
But can I also just mention that there was also a meeting towards the end of CCV2 where it was being discussed, and then it was quite clear that there wasn't a consensus and there was quite a strong contingent on either side. And then I think it may have been Loris who said, "Oh, right, so it seems like we have consensus." And
couldn't have been.
Believed it, and on it went.
I don't remember where it was. I didn't end up doing the vote, but I was well aware that it was extended to 6 months somehow. So I wasn't following closely, but somewhere in that process of leading up to it, I was communicated that it was a 6-month term.
I think it was mentioned in town hall next week after that, and then I realized, okay, that's closed.
But there was undoubtedly a lot of confusion. I mean, up to and during the election, and even some of the candidates, I think, did not realize what the term was.
You see, what I thought had been agreed was there could potentially be a 6-month term, but it would be decided at the 3-month term.
At one point, I actually thought that it's 3 months, and then they have the option to stand again.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought was decided. Yeah. This shows you we all think different things. Yeah.
Okay, so it's very confusing. That's what we got. Okay.
I think the thing is that most of the community seem to be aware that there isn't an election coming up and that people are in place for 6 months. But how that happened, I don't think people know. So I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, the fact that you can extend, I think that was like a compromise, like instead of, yeah, between the both who thought it's great to have 3 months and who thought it's great to have 6 months. But I think calling that CC version 4 is incorrect. I would say it's still CC version 3. They just have longer time frame.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that nomenclature is going to be a bit confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think-
terms.
okay, there is,
3.5.
but going back to the action, going back to the action, I would suggest that you do refer to it, Alison, but in a kind of like a factual thing. You just say, you know, this is when there would have been elections, partly also to draw attention to the fact that work needs to proceed on preparing for an election.
Yes. Yes. Which is, I think, needs to, the good thing about having 6 months is that I think now there's a long period of time to prepare for that, because that, I think that was another problem at the end of the CCV2 term, was that there were a lot of great ideas about improving the election process, but not a lot of time to work through it.
Yeah, I know discussions have begun in CC admin about this because we're concerned that 3 months is not a very long time, actually. So to prepare an election process. So I think we need, our contribution to this, sorry, Vanessa, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that there might actually be some sort of a question going on in CCV3 at the moment about the election process. I know there's a problem on the board about it, I think Harris raised, but there's been a sort of conversation about the idea that they could do the process by raising it as a challenge setting and then having each person who is standing being a proposal within that challenge setting, and then people vote that way.
Yeah.
And obviously if they're going to do that for what happens in 3 months, they've missed the boat, because they should have applied, they should have put that in as a challenge setting for Fund 9. So I don't know where that leaves it in terms of timing.
On that, did anyone notice that that the cadence got changed to 3 a year instead of 4? Just happened.
Yep, just happened.
Yeah.
It just sort of we're now in a that's what it is, 4-month cadence instead of 3-month cadence.
But you mean fund cadence?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So-
that's a parameter change.
Yeah, and I wonder then if the CC really should stay in step with that. So like otherwise
Oh,
it's going to cross over and do weird things now. So
so then they need another 4 months, actually, bonus month.
Okay.
yeah, that could happen, right? Maybe.
Why not raise that as well, Alison? Like how does the 4 month is it a 4 month cadence?
It's not officially said anywhere that it's changed to a 4, but it is now a 4-month cadence, from my understanding, based on the new fund timetable.
Probably need to check that, but I would say
3 months and 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks was added silence on the, not all the. Plus 1 week because we kind of missed the voting, and I assume it could be the same thing for next month.
Okay, Matthias, and then if we move on after Matthias to the next item.
Yeah, talking about parameter change, I mean, the notion of funding right back to ADA is also a significant change that I want to address.
Yeah, right.
That's a great point.
Can we hold that? Can we hold that for the parameter change item?
Yeah.
I'll go. Chemic's not here, so sorry, Phil. Yeah.
No, I'll hold it off for any other items at the end. It's probably more suitable.
We do have a governance parameters item as well. So
I'll hold off for that then.
Yeah. So DREPs, Chemic's not here. We had our first DAO governance literature review meeting with Steph from Wolfram and others, where we went over the Zotero tool. We're going to start holding these meetings regularly, so they'll probably go overlap with the Fund 8 proposal, hopefully, if we get funded. Again, like with our work with Circle, we'll probably do an interim report where we say in our report, a closing report, that we're just beginning to work on reviewing the academic literature behind DREPs and liquid democracy. So that's really it. I don't really have Kenrick to speak to that, but we are. If there's any questions on that at all, or queries or suggestions. If not, we can move on to governance parameters. Before we go on to two items that have just been raised, me and Tivo met to do a quick working on what is a parameter change. Do you want to speak about that, Tivo, a little bit?
Yeah, so we look at the high level of that, and we kind of split the parameter to make difference between the types. So you have some kind of like, I don't even remember all the types we came up, but one was like process, another one was like specific terms like number or date or some limit, and then yeah. So and then to also make the parameters give the measure to them, and I need to open the mirror to have such a conversation. But yeah, so basically when you kind of know what kind of types of parameters there are, then the next step was like, in order to make it a parameter, you need some brief description and how can it be changed. And once this is kind of documented, then it is a parameter change. And there is one video I added into that regarding the last Treasury talk from Kevin Hammond, I think, and where they also a bit of talked about how they use the IOG keys and what is when they do decisions, like how it's usually done, which is closed door, and we may never get to know why or some decision was made. But I think it's good to kind of clarify that some parameter changes are done like that, and so that we know which happens in closed doors and what could we do in community. So once we kind of create a process for a parameter, then IoT can't really just do their own thing and have to coordinate with community.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that, Tivo, and realized that we probably should address that. So I've done a transcript of the Kevin Hammond meeting, and I'm going to turn that into a frequently asked question on Treasury, because that meeting answered, I spoke to you briefly about this, Alison, as well, that meeting answered a lot of questions that people had about Treasury that crop up. So I want to sort of document that separately as, you know, the questions, and I'll put it under the governance parameters section here, but it is related to our general discussion about parameters. And moving back to what we were discussing previously, then two parameters have come up in this meeting. The first one is the 4-month cadence, and then the second one is the ADA. So do we want to talk about that?
Can I add another one onto that before we start there as well?
Yeah, hold on.
Which is the CA, sorry, the VCA, or just the QA petition process that Nadia has been working on.
Right, okay. Is that what it's called, the QA?
Well, I just called it that. It's called this VCA, but there's been 2 CAs that have been participating as petitioners.
Okay.
So it needs to be just changed to the maybe the review petition process or something. I don't know what it's called.
Okay. And what particularly is, you think that is a parameter change?
Yeah, because now there's a way of requesting a review if you feel like it's been unfairly, if your assessments have been unfairly removed, or if you believe that VCAs have been reviewing inconsistently.
Okay.
But
You know, as long
go ahead, Alison, but I do want to continue.
as we're tracking parameter changes, there are actually 2 more associated with VCAs. One is who is eligible to be a VCA. That was a parameter change this fund. And the other is the introduction of a reputation model for VCAs, which is part of what prompted the petition
Yeah.
process.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff, individual minor parameters inside those as well, right? So
Yeah.
but the main issue that I'd want to bring up is, so the community's now gone ahead and created this in this permissionless system for this petition process. We operated it, but pretty much we're hamstrung at that point to what then happens. The results of the petition disappear back into the IOG ether, and we'll decide something, and then it will come back out. So I tried to indicate that to Danny yesterday. As you probably have noticed in the past, I've always been, okay, yep, IOG's stewarding this process, let's let them do their process. But the more and more parameters that they're pushing out onto the community without engagement, I'm starting to now, my pendulum's swinging towards that way of saying, okay, how do we now help IOG pass these things to the community?
Yeah.
So in that, I was mentioning the concept of agency. So we don't have any community agency beyond the ability to start stuff, but how it's applied, who like the effects of it on the process are non-existent beyond the fact that we started a discussion. And you could go back to the red and yellow thing that we started as a community, and then it got rolled out and said, no, now we're going to this good, excellent, filtered out process. And we said, okay, fine, fair enough. You've got a research team doing research into it, but you've got a whole community out here that's also doing research, and you're kind of just, you're drawing on it. And
I picked up on something particularly you said, which I've heard elsewhere for other parameter changes, that, you know, okay, the community works on something like a petition process. It comes up with these results and they go to IOG, and then what? That's a black box. Is that what we're saying? And this seems to be a trope, if you like, of
it's getting that way.
Yeah, where, and then we say a decision comes back, then it's sometimes not clear how that decision was made. Go on.
And part of this, I'm now exploring this. I've got a meeting with Harris tomorrow, I think, about opening the data. So part of that discussion that I'm going to have with him is, we as a community need IOG to give us those goalposts that say, when the community hits these targets, they can take it into their hands. So that's the next step, is now we're going to have to put it into IOG. So instead of them going away and discussing what next, they need to start getting out ahead of it and saying, okay, here's the goalpost. We'll keep working up until this goalpost is reached. But as the community reaches that point, once it gets that point, they're now in control of it. And that's what we're missing at the moment. Those marks of when agency changes hands from steward to community. And it might take years to get there, but while we all put those posts, like whenever people identify that we need to set these posts, that's when IOG needs to go away and start thinking about this stuff. So that's the methodology that I think might work, but we'll see whether they want to engage with it.
That's a nice way of putting it, a kind of addressing the issue of community agency. So yeah, because we haven't had that really. We've had a lot of what ifs, but we haven't had anything like, here's a process. If you meet this process, community, and you do this, then you can take over this way, take this over. And we've never had that, have we? We've never had that.
No, and I'd say up until now, we've been too young, too small, too baby-like to handle it. But now we've got quite a engaged, energetic community. But they're also starting, like, I know what people were saying before. They were not feeling this agency, but I was always on the side of, we're too infantile to ask for that. But I feel like Fund 7 was that point that we switched into a more of an adolescent group of people in thinking
certainly adolescent, yeah.
Of Catalyst, right? Like Catalyst is no longer a thing in its baby drawers. It's now, you know, it's a thing, right? It exists. We've got people coming in from all over the place. We've got all sorts of discussions happening all over the place. Yeah, it's what happens. But the next step now is to work out how the community can start helping IOG remove what it can from being the stewards. And that's it. That's our next step. That's where we are.
Okay, so just checking that your time constraint, Alison, is not so lifted. So I was going to. Yeah. Okay. So we're at a point where we are able to push a bit harder against that door, then, Phil. So kind of like, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean,
Well, it's like when that you start letting the kid cross the road by themselves, sort of thing. Like when does that happen? What are the scenario? What's the situation that IOG needs to be in place to let that to happen?
So
one thing I see here is that the same look like the same way we looked into how is parameter change done, using that same conclusion. Now we could adopt like, okay, the time was changed, new page was added, and documenting currently how it was done and what we envision how it would look like. And whenever like IOG is changing stuff, we could be somewhat reactive and tell them, okay, next time I'm gonna do this. Let's try to follow this process because it is more like digestible, maybe, or just more fair. And over time, we kind of get the knowledge because we ourselves write the process.
Yeah, I really like the work you guys are doing on identifying what a parameter is, because in that way we can start to let IOG understand what a parameter is and start to say, hey, when you look to change any of these things, some of this needs to start being discussed in the community, not just in the halls of IOG.
Yeah. Before I move on to Vanessa, there's also potentially we should be working on the equivalent of a parameter change rubric in the same way as we have a rubric for a prioritized problem. So because there's the issue of consistency when we change it, because it seems like these parameter changes are just happening all over the place all of a sudden, and there's no consistency, there's no who is, it just seems to be quite arbitrary. Vanessa.
Yeah, I think there is that thing about arbitrariness and about kind of not informing the community that something has changed. But I also feel that kind of parameter changes get approached very piecemeal. It's like we often find ourselves discussing, oh, is this actually a parameter change? And I think to many people, the thing that we were talking about earlier with the CAs and VCAs petition, maybe people would go, is that a parameter change? I don't know, but it does have an effect and it kind of creeps in. And like something was announced in Telegram today, which I don't know if everybody knew, I didn't, is that it seems, Danny announced it as if it was decided, but he didn't announce it. He said it in answer to a question, that there is going to be a deposit required of people to submit a proposal in Fund 9.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Where did that come from?
Not Fund 9.
I have to say, just speaking personally, if that had been in place in Fund 6, I would never have been able to propose. So it's interesting. It excludes those on a low income. It doesn't exclude the rich. But anyway, aside from that, it's the fact that it's questionable whether that is, just looking at it superficially, is that really a parameter? But when you look at what effects it has and what knock-on effects it has, then yes, it kind of is, because it really systemically changes how things work. So I guess my point is, there aren't changes being made to like big parameters that everybody recognizes as a parameter, but there are arbitrary ones to little things that actually do have a massive effect.
Before I move back on to Phil,
I'll put a message in the chat. Hold on.
I think we need to raise our game on parameters a bit then, because we are Oversight, and we did initially think that the parameter issue was postponed, but clearly it's not postponed. It's gone underground.
The community discussion of parameters is postponed, maybe.
Yeah, it's gone underground, and parameters are happening, and we're not, So this is the sort of thing we might want to say at Town Hall, Alison. If we can absorb this, not to be provocative, but
of course it will be provocative, though.
I next time, instead of my sunglasses, I'll bring my suit of armor.
Yeah, a helmet. Everyone will wear governance helmets.
What's the common thread here, Phil? What's the common issue amongst all of this? I would suggest maybe we should highlight that.
Well, I mean, from the community point of view, I'd say it's communication. But whenever Danny's involved with that conversation that says, "Hey, maybe we need to be better informed," the answer is inevitably, "Here's the link that I sent to in the stream of Telegram," right? So the question is what's the best communication channel to make sure that we're all aware of these? Well, one, discussions of the parameter changes, and two, when these things are going to actually happen. So, for instance, in the petition process, no, not in the petition, in the explanation of the new VCA reputation model, that document was shared, and I did read it. And there was discussion last night about the 50% issue there. And people were going, well, why 50%? And Danny correctly pointed out, well, it was announced, it was participated on by a number of people, by those that are engaged at that point. But communication is how do we communicate that there's parameter changes in discussion? And how do we dissent these parameter changes, I guess, at the moment, because there is no dissent option at the moment for the community, because it's an IOG parameter being put in place, and we can discuss the edges of that parameter, I guess, not the meat of it at this point. And maybe that's the correct way. Sorry.
Isn't that up to us, though, that the community, if we're not consulted on something, we need to ask why we're not being consulted on something?
The thing is we are consulted, as in the document is posted in the stream, in various streams. So it's just whether a single post by Danny, because people aren't watching Telegram all day, every day, but Danny is. So from Danny's point of view, it is communicated and people engage with him. So he's getting 10, 20 people discussing stuff with him.
No, but we were on the other, I mean, maybe that's the case. I don't know the nuances of the petition process, but let's take these other ones I've listed here, the 4-month cadence and the funds in ADA thing, whatever that was. That was just sprung on us, wasn't it? We were just told this is a done deal, and so all we can do, that was the consultation, we've done it. So now our response to that, sorry, TV, your hand up. So.
Might just ask first.
Who first? Matthias,
no.
Sorry.
I lowered my hand. It's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to say. One thing regarding this, like idea of putting like a cost to make proposals. I think it has been discussed several times in community, and probably I don't know, is it these statement cards related somehow? I'm not sure, did I saw it there too, but I think they have like from different sources, you kind of capture the knowledge of, okay, it seems like it's good to have some sort of that opportunity that you pay to get your proposal in, but it still gives you, but now what in discussions we had was like, if somebody else can pay for your proposal and you can get it back, and all of these questions are still unknown. I think the source issue there is that we do not have a board for parameter changes or any of these stuff, and it's all over the,
we lack,
it's discussed, but it's not really bring forth or focused on. So now when IOG comes back, hey, this whatever you spoke about 1 month ago, let's spin it up, let's get it working, then we are kind of confused which pocket of information is shown, because I assume he didn't like drop Steven's Git book or anything related to that discussion where everything is written down.
I mean, I suppose it comes back to the agency, like when is the decision made? Who is involved in actually, these things might be discussed in the community, and IOG might turn around to us and say, well, we did this because the community said that. But that's not the issue. The issue is, when did you decide that, and who did you decide that with? Isn't that the issue?
Yeah,
So-
and then once it's decided to be looked at, it needs to feed back into the community so that the people who weren't involved with the actual thinking it's the correct way to do things can comment and discuss it, and we can come to some sort of consensus with it.
Well,
Because
and sorry.
well, I was just going to say, I remember seeing that discussion about the fee. Obviously, the details are going to matter, but I don't necessarily agree with it, or at least without knowing more about it.
And that, ironically, Phil, that process you're describing is exactly what Harris had sketched out in the parameters pilot, which was the origin of this group, that we would serve that role of ensuring that parameters are debated, discussed, surveyed, workshopped, and communicated as broadly as possible. So I think we're doing exactly the right thing to continue the work around defining and organizing our thoughts on parameters and documenting the changes that are happening in the fashion that they're happening in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. I don't know if you can see that. That's what's supposed to be happening. In that was delayed. So a change comes in and it immediately goes back to the community for feedback. And there's a deliberation. Well, in this case, it was deliberation between Catalyst Circle and the Technical Council. But that was
So
yeah.
Is IOG already implementing this technical council internally for themselves?
Yeah,
Because
who
it's
knows?
Who
Well, it
knows?
seems like that's what's happening, right? That they have this research team. So what I was thinking about is that we should be having access to that research team rather than through a spokesperson. So we need that. We need a regular meeting with those people who are researching to feedback what they're researching and then pass that on to the community, right? That would be the community. That would be the feedback loop.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I wonder if a Fund 8 pivot, even if it's not quite in line, but towards actually collecting and documenting all these parameter changes.
It's not even a change of scope, Phil. This is in scope. I think this is in scope.
It's in scope, but it's but with no we just need to make it happen, I guess, rather than maybe we took IOG's word that they're not working on any parameters incorrectly, and we need to work towards the engagement more with those parameters. So as I said before, your work is amazing that we've now defined or have the early stages of a definition of parameters, so we can start pointing at that and saying, hey, these are all parameters, guys. Let's start discussing these things.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming to the end of our time. Just want to say we're still going to go slightly over, but sorry, Tivo and Alison, gone. Carry on. So I just want to say that's just a warning about time. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think when the official Catalyst parameters pilot got delayed or whatever, mothballed, I think that IOG and Harris perhaps lost some focus on this group, and we were unable to get Harris to engage with us because perhaps it's not his priority anymore. So I just wanted to perhaps ask Phil, if you're meeting with him anyway, I know it's on a different subject, if we could perhaps revisit the idea of having an IOG representative join this group for exactly this reason. It seems like we need a conduit to what's happening at IOG to answer some of these questions and collectively work towards.
We do have that already with Danny.
But I think he's overloaded. I think
we did. I'm just going to give some context to that.
Okay.
That I was in discussions with Danny about him attending this meeting, going back. There was a timing clash because it clashes apparently with their team meeting or something every week. And then I said, look, we could alter the time of the meeting. And then he said, then he sort of backed off a little bit, and then but he did, his last comment was, if you want someone from IOG to come and attend this meeting for a particular thing or something, you know, then that precedent is there. So whether that be Danny or Harris, or, you know.
But I wonder if we just start, like, so the petition process is now kind of a thing. It can be canned again, but maybe we just start mentioning these are the current parameter changes that have happened. Like someone.
I mean, yeah. From my perspective, it seems a bit. I'm not saying it's deliberate. I think it's kind of. It's just gone off in a certain direction, you know. But originally, let's think why this proposal was drafted. This proposal was drafted to give oversight of parameter changes in part, and those parameter changes were envisaged, as Alison pointed out, to be with a technical council kind of bicameral system. But still within that, there's still the issue of parameter changes per se. That's continued on, and that part of our scope isn't dormant. It's actually just been sidelined, unfortunately. So I suppose that's the question. Maybe we should bring someone from IOG to this meeting and say, it's the kind of questions we need to ask. And I think that you picked up on it, Phil, these community agency questions. It's not so much who is consulted, it's who decides the parameter changes. And at the point something is decided, where is the community involved in that?
Yeah.
And is that the key issue? And then, as you say, after that decision's made, there is a kind of feedback process. There's supposed to be, you know, you don't just like launch that on the community, you then take it to the community, don't you?
Yeah, it needs time to be created, discussed, altered, and then moved on. I mean, we in parliaments around the world, this is what happens, right? There's a proposals put in, the discussions happening, and then the thing gets turned into the thing that people work with. So yeah, I think that there's a bit of stuff missing inside there, and we as a group, our purpose is to kind of start looking towards making that happen, I think. So
okay, so what should we do? Should we invite a member of IOG to the next meeting? Should we say something at town hall?
One thing I will think we need to do, or maybe we don't need to, but would be if we take this example, this 4-month cadence, for example, and then turn it into parameter, or like to document that parameter, and then when IOG joins in, we have something to show what we will expected to see, that in order to see this time change.
So I think the definition of a parameter, both from our point of view, consultation with the community, so we should release that document at some point and ask for feedback on it, then asking IOG what a parameter is. And then, like Alison mentioned just then, we start cataloging the parameters like we think they are. And then, like Tivo just said, we then question when IOG decides to start changing or announces a parameter change that we hadn't thought of. We add that to the catalog and say, here's Catalyst, here are the Catalyst parameters.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of them. Like another one that we just mentioned was the $16 million fund, whether it's $16 million or whether it's going to go to $32 million or whether it goes back to 8. This is a parameter, right? So IOG decided that it was.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a big question. Is like, what is a parameter? Alignment across IOG oversight committee. What is a parameter? And we have a perception of what a parameter is, don't we?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if everyone agrees. So maybe we need to agree on that, and then if that's agreed, then that leads on to a discussion about, well, okay, what's the basic process? Would you say those are the two things, or?
Well, I would say a mixture of those things. So we need to define a parameter both internally and externally. So ourselves and then IOG and community, which you said. we need to catalog the existing parameters as we see them,
Right.
which includes already existing parameters as we see them, and any new parameters that appear as they get discovered. And then we need to start drawing attention to those parameters and that they are changing, and that maybe a better system needs to be put in place to have the feedback loop happening.
Yeah. Okay, we're coming to it. We're over time, so I think we have some actions there. I'll try and distill those into actions, but it seems to be clear that we're looking for some clarity. What do you think about inviting someone from IOG to the next meeting? Sorry, Vanessa, got a hand up.
Oh, just quickly, if we're listing the parameter changes, could we also list, as far as we can tell, where they came from as well, or where they were first mentioned or released or whatever?
I think how they were set is the
Yeah, that's
question,
part
right?
of it. But I also think there's questions around how things are shared with the community. So it'd just be good to try and record that as far as we can.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, these are questions, so I'm just thinking, that's why I'm thinking of bringing someone along. What do you think, Alison? Or do you think we should say to Danny or Harris, you have to come along and answer this?
I think it would be good to bring somebody from IOG into the conversation.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that I think that, I mean, maybe it's not unfortunate. I don't think we should wait. I would like to talk about this at the next town hall. I'm joking about making it rather lengthy, but I do think we should reference that we're starting to catalog these parameter changes and mention some of the recent ones, and mention that our initial role, the very birth of this whole idea, was to ensure good communication.
So that suggests that we do a meeting before the next CGO meeting.
Yes, before the next town hall, if possible.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. I think we should invite IOG to a meeting that occurs before the next town hall. Okay. And if they choose not to participate, that's fine. But I think it makes sense to give them a heads up and an opportunity to have a conversation before taking it to town hall.
Okay, well, this is a CGO meeting, or sometime next week. Okay. And
in that meeting, I think that we want to present a simplified version of what we define as a parameter, and the list of the categorized parameters that we've identified.
Okay.
And then we say we would like to present these at town hall, so that's the next step.
Yes. Okay. I'm not sure if we have time. Thursday, Friday. I'm not sure we'll have time for exactly the next town hall, but we can try and aim for that if we have a meeting for Monday or Tuesday. Well,
actually, we have 2 weeks, because CGO wouldn't present for another 2 weeks if we stay on the same cadence.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Phil mentioned the next town hall. I was just thinking next week. So yeah. So we'll have a meeting next week sometime. That's what I suggest. That makes it more flexible. It'll go over those things that you've mentioned, Phil. We'll all have an opportunity to do the agenda for that, and to decide what actions should come out of that, Phil, as well. So, Matthias.
I'd actually, I mean, now that voting has ended, hopefully we go back to, the highest potential of human collaboration, but it looks like what I assume IO's reactive measures to put in something like deposits, and also the moving to ADA as a currency is very excluding. Vanessa pointed that already out. And I thought we are at a point where we can bring in real people in the world into Catalyst, right? A broader audience, especially since we still focus on the tech, but also on many other things. And I think IO is on the total wrong path. And I think for that we need, or I propose, even with the cool down period, to sound the alarm at the next town hall to have a CGO and then also audit circle update.
I agree. I think I would remind that I think we are legitimized to address this. We were partly created by IOG. We were voted on by the community to address this in part. Phil.
I'm still not clear that we're proposing in ADA. I believe that the treasury's in ADA, but we're still proposing in US dollars.
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding also. I think that's been clarified. The proposing happens in dollars.
And the idea behind that is that so that it's not $16 million of pool available in case ADA dumps, let's say it halves in value, it's 16 million worth of ADA that will maybe be some various number of USD. That's my understanding. So it could be to 8 million USD, it could be 6 million, it could be 12 million.
But the meeting
Whatever.
to discuss the parameters, we would cover that through documenting what we think have been parameter changes. Not to go into too much detail, not to go into too much detail, but just to refer to them. You know.
Well, still changing it from USD to ADA I would consider a parameter change.
And the examples we have at the moment are the petition process, the 4-month cadence, the funds in ADA, whatever you want to call all that stuff, and anything else that we can think of to document them. Not to go into too much detail, but just to pinpoint, well, where was the decision-making process for that? Alison.
So who is going to take the lead in reaching out to IOG and getting the meeting scheduled next week?
I will.
Wonderful.
I will, yeah. Unless anyone else wants to do it. It's actually, if someone else wants to do it, then they're welcome to. I shouldn't have said me, should I? Damn. Okay, yeah, I will. Yeah. Who would we prefer, Danny or Harris? I think Danny's more likely to come.
Harris or Chris?
I think they're unlikely to come. I have to say that, but I think.
But we need to get to the decision makers.
I do.
Chris might be on honeymoon.
My preference would be for Harris, only because he's the IOG rep to the circle, and he's the one who introduced the parameters pilot in the first place.
If we can get Harris.
Realistically, I think it's going to be who can make it. I don't know if we'll have a lot of choice.
I know I probably could get, well, put it this way, I could get Danny to come, I think. I'm not sure if I could get Harris to come because he never seems to respond to me very much. I'm sure that's not personal.
Look, I got to him through Joey on the circle. So if we put it up into the circle, put it forward to the circle, maybe even through Joey or through.
We should be able to contact him directly through Slack, Tivo or Alison.
See, I'm not on Slack, so that's...
so yeah, I know. We probably should. We do have that.
Run for a circle position.
Yeah, exactly. You're next, Phil.
No. I'm going to go D-Rep. D-Rep seems to be the right path for me. Okay.
Well, for the sake of the meeting, I mean, we're going to come back to this because we're having a meeting. But if there's, unless there's anyone's dying to say anything else on that, because we obviously need to do things offline to put together an agenda for what we're going to discuss and so on. Yeah, go on, Alison.
Where did we leave this? Who is taking the action to follow up with whom at IOG?
I think Danny, but I know Harris is more specific to the question. But if it was Harris, I would like someone else to approach Harris, like maybe yourself, Alison.
I'll see. I'm meeting him tomorrow, so if it presents opportunity, I will have a chat to him. And
okay, let's do that, and then if not, we can see who we can get. But I'll put.
Yeah, I think that Harris is the most relevant. I also understand how busy he is, and he's the least likely. So why don't we do this, Phil? Can you try and let me know if you don't have an opportunity? I'll try him in Slack, and let's do this fairly quickly because we're short on time. And if so we'll have plan A, B, and C. Phil's plan A, I'm plan B. And if both of those fail, Stephen, maybe you reach out to Danny.
Yeah.
Not that he's our third choice. That sounds awful, but I think Harris is the most relevant to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have everyone's email address in case that goes ahead?
Yes.
Yep.
We have it on the yeah, if you pass it by me, I have everything on the invite for this meeting goes throughout everyone's email.
Okay.
So I can do it that way. But yeah, yeah, the initiatives reviewed Phil on that with meeting Harris then. And then if you say to Harris that we could, you know, probably arrange the meeting around his timing, so we can be flexible around him to a certain extent.
It could even be 30 minutes, you think? Could we?
Yeah, because I mean, my agenda is mostly to give him a heads up that we're going to talk about this in town hall.
Yeah, and an
That's-
opportunity to engage with us if he wants to. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're quite over time, but I suppose we did need to discuss that as quite an important issue. So we don't need to discuss proposal reporting because that's not until the 24th, and we're having another meeting. Any other business? There's a thread in Discord for the summary of today's meeting for the weekly newsletter, as usual. If anyone wants to put any summary in there, just post a summary in there and I can edit it together and we can put it in the newsletter. This section has kind of become, go on, Phil.
Will you put your link towards the parameter discussion on Gitbooks? Can we add that yet, or is it not ready yet for that?
The Gitbook, yes, it's already on the Gitbook.
Yeah. So it's not. It's you're happy to make that public. Then I'd say add that to the newsletter.
Yeah, that's been
good.
It was actually. We might repeat something that we said in the slides, because I think it was you referred to it in the slides, Alison, as well. The discussion on parameter changes that me and Tivo had, and
Yes, I did.
And we tweeted about it. So I'm trying to tweet about all our meetings as well. You know, so but yeah, that's the kind of thing we've actually done quite a lot in the past 2 weeks. We've done, you know, but so I probably can summarize a lot of that, you know, and put that in the newsletter. But maybe if we want to put a subtle emphasis on parameters as well, that might be interesting. Any AOB has also turned to this kind of update for last time it did on what else has been going on as well. So the constitutional working group, Matthias, for example. Do you want to say anything on that, or does anyone have any AOBs? Vanessa, sorry, you got your hand up as well.
Yeah, just to add really quickly on that question of other governance initiatives going on, the LATAM community are developing some work on creating a manifesto, and they're doing some quite ongoing and interesting work on that. So just so people are aware of that, and I think they're, you know, they'll be sharing when it's ready to share.
Right, that's good to know. Thank you. Sorry, Matthias.
I should talk to Juan. Yeah, so for the working group, there was another meeting yesterday. We're still not exactly sure that we were working on the right thing, right? So the feedback has been well received. We're still pushing out the form, the Gimbal Labs working group. So far, it hasn't just. I guess it's at the size of, you know, how many people show up at governance day, like Catalyst Circle Rep voting. So it's in the dozens, which is not representative at all. But yeah, it's good to hear that there's opportunity, or that the LATAM community works on a manifesto, because the form also has been translated into Spanish. I'm not sure Portuguese at this point, but yeah, it's ongoing work. And the intention is not, again, to get something top down from IO or whoever. Maybe Mogo shows up, who knows, or CF, whether that is, even though CF said it's the community that should come up with a constitution or a charter or a manifesto or a set of principles, right? So it's ongoing work.
Yeah. Is it related to Gimbal Labs tokenomics work as well?
Yes, that is that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. That's the, yeah, it's kind of in a tokenomics group, and I'm not sure if that's a good place or not, but that's where it's kind of started, okay, in that setting.
Okay. Do you want to say anything on the innovation fund architecture, even stuff you've been doing, Tivo?
Yeah, so that we did the 3 sessions regarding proposal assessor role. So that would be the community advisor. And we completed it so that there is no more questions to add to this template. I took a slight break, but the only way to finalize it is to make now an overview video, which is less than 10 minutes to encapsulate all of that information in more consumable material. And where my focus is right now is Catalyst School introduction content for the Catalyst School website, which is currently in beta, but for Fund 9, we would like to get it out and start onboarding through that.
Okay, Phil, you ever have a hand up?
Yeah, I'd just like to quickly mention the reason why I'm having a meeting with Harris tomorrow is for a discussion about open data. So that's been on the boil for a little while. So I will update where that goes, hopefully well, but we'll see.
Is that others as well as you, Phil?
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Okay.
Live donation will be there. George is invited. Rory's invited as well.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
So, and then also Tevo just mentioned the Cattler School, so I'm also working on the proposer side of the Cattler School there.
Right. So I suppose I'm thinking more of governance. I suppose that is more governance initiatives.
There's something, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll just take those actually from last time. So that's it. Okay, thank you everyone and we've overrun by 20 minutes, but yeah, that's fine. If there's any feedback on the meeting.
I'd just like to say I feel like we've kind of found our feet as a governance oversight group. Yeah, I guess this is the way it goes, right?
Yeah,
you need to have that forming stage, but we're kind of, it's kind of looking interesting where we can head with this now. So
cool.
Oh no, are we gonna enter storming soon?
Yeah, shut up.
Okay.
No, I hope not, but yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, this is the penultimate meeting. I was getting a bit panicked about the final report, but then I realized that because we hopefully we don't know if we're going to get funded again, but if we get funded again, then we can continue this on. And the reports can just report on how far we've got, so I wouldn't panic too much about that. We deliver what we can deliver, so that's really what that's what we're set out to do. So I'm glad to hear that we certainly are producing a lot of activity, and which is good. So the next meeting will be, well, there'll be other meetings, but the next CGO meeting will be on the 19th of May, and I'll just stop the screen share there. And I thank you everyone, and I will stop the recording.